Most people at some point in their lives probably wonder how it is they have picked up certain behaviors. There are 5 core wounds or soul wounds that we can choose to experience in our soul's evolution. And I'm going to share the ways that the ego copes with these wounds. You may recognize some of the behaviors in yourself. The first soul wound or core wound is the wound of rejection. Of course, this is usually by a parent. And the way the ego reacts is to put on the mask of being withdrawn. Some of the things you may notice in yourself as a result of this core wound are dissatisfaction with who you are, what you're all about. You don't respect yourself in large part. You may suffer from anxiety. You may concentrate on your intellect. You may find that you either still escape with or have in the past alcohol, drugs, shopping, overeating, gambling. You may have found yourself isolating quite a bit in your lifetime, but feeling lonely at the same time, even though isolation was your choice. You may find that you are always busy. It's hard to just sit and be. And you also may be a perfectionist. The second soul wound is that of abandonment, because either emotionally or actually physically a parent has left your life. And what does the ego do? Become dependent on others. Some of the things you may notice: having a fear of being lonely, so you find yourself surrounding yourself with people all the time. You may find yourself sad or depressed and not really knowing why. You cry a lot. You could have found yourself identifying with being a victim. Maybe you think you have bad luck. You may find that you easily take on the emotions of others, and possibly their suffering also. But it is not in the way that the empath does. It is to attract attention. You may talk about yourself a lot. You may have a hard time with making decisions. If others have advice to share with you, you may be very resistant to accepting it. Changeable moods are not out of the ordinary. You may stay in relationships long past when you should have left. And when you're faced with an angry or aggressive person, you may find yourself turning into a scared little kid. The third soul wound is humiliation. This is from being shamed when you were a kid. You may experience paranoia about always being observed. You may work so hard to prove yourself to be worthy in the eyes of others. You find yourself doing everything you can to serve others. And you may have a very hard time expressing yourself fully in words. You show major restraint. Have you noticed that you tend to make excuses for others? You usually can find a reason that others may have acted in this or that way. You may have a hard time admitting to being a sensual being, and you could altogether suppress your drive. If you become very happy, maybe even experiencing joy, you may fear that you'll be punished for that. So your goal is not usually to be happy. You probably put the needs of others above your own. You may acknowledge or not even be aware that you don't feel worthy. It could be you have an issue with food. You're compensating something within yourself by eating. You may have a talent for making people laugh, but it's not just jokes in the normal way. You will do that by making fun of yourself or humiliating yourself. The fourth soul or core wound is that of being betrayed. This could be because your parent lost your trust by making promises that were not kept or lying to you, maybe just from being weak and not being able to be there for you fully. How did your ego react? By becoming controlling. You may be imposing your will on others often and your point of view. You may be quite insensitive. You want to show that you're strong. You also want to show that you are always improving yourself. Reputation could be extremely important to you. You will have an intolerance for people that lie, but you may lie to yourself. You could have extremely high expectations of others. You may need to plan things very well and are not very flexible if things take you by surprise. Although it might be hard to admit, you probably can acknowledge that you have been controlling of others, and that does equate to manipulating them. You may have a lack of trust in the opposite sex. You may jump to conclusions too quickly. You might also decide to take impulsive action. You may find yourself offending people all the time, and you can quickly cut off people. You generally have a lack of tolerance and patience with others. The last soul wound is injustice. The ego can put on a very harsh mask because of this. But it's also a dishonest mask because you may show that you're just full of energy when you're exhausted because you have a hard time admitting that you might experience problems. You've heard of that love and light. You may have to show others that you're always optimistic. And you do try to be perfect. Just the thought of losing control freaks you out. You may actually be unfair to others but not be aware of it. Have a hard time showing your feelings, and because of that, you may not have had many, if any, satisfying intimate relationships in your life. When you're sick, it's very hard for you to admit it. You're just used to putting a lot of demands on your body. You can tolerate a lot of pain. There is criticism of yourself and others, and you put skills above feelings. Now, none of these are anything that you need to feel bad about. They are things you can work on. They are things you can heal. But you can see now that there was a reason you developed these behaviors. We're all just human. We've all been wounded in one way or another. We don't have to stay wounded.